Welcome to Excel Tips. My name is Neil Blackwood, and in this episode we're going to look at how we can build interaction into a Power Query. So Power Query is the best way to import data into Excel. Power Query allows you to import data from multiple different sources, from CSV files, text files, PDFs, all of the standard databases like Access, SQL, those sort of things. So you can bring the data together in Excel using Power Query. Also, Power Query allows you to do a lot of data cleansing. So this can include removing spaces that might be in codes. It can include fixing dates. We're not going to cover any of the data cleansing features in Power Query in this video. We're going to look at how we can add interaction to the Power Query. We're going to create 4 queries to make this system work. And I'm also going to introduce an idea that's useful to embrace when you're using Power Query about staging queries. Okay, before we dive in, I'll show you what the data looks like. It's in a CSV file, so let's go have a look at it. Now, what I'm doing now is not importing the data, it's just showing you what the data looks like. So it's called sales data. So you can download this from the In the Black website. So this is the raw data, and you can just start with a blank Excel file to import it. You will need to show all files to see it. If you just have all your Excel files, you won't be able to see the CSV file. So you need to say all files. This is what it looks like. And again, we're not importing this. This is just showing you what it looks like. What we want to do is focus on the state column. The interaction we're going to build is going to allow the user to select the state to import. So there's multiple states in here, it's sales data, and so we want to just focus on a particular state for this Power Query. Okay, we can close this down. This is just a blank file, and we're going to start sort of from scratch to import the data. So staging queries. What they allow you to do is to bring the data into Excel and perform all of the data cleansing operations that you might need to do. And you don't actually bring it in as a table, you bring it in as what's called a connection only query. And so what that does is the data comes into Excel, but it's sort of kept in RAM, in the computer's memory. And then you use that as what's called a reference. And that becomes the source data for your next query, which we'll see as we build this. So the staging query brings all of the data in, and then you can then manipulate that total data set by however you want, filtering, removing columns, all of that, those sort of things. Okay, so let's see how we do this. I'm going to click on the data ribbon tab at the top here. I'm going to click from text or CSV. It's already figured out where my data is. I have had a look at this morning, so it's remembered that. So it's on my C drive under a data folder. When you're using from text or CSV, it's actually looking for text files here. So this CSV and text files are considered the same sort of thing. So it's got the text files option selected. Sales data is the one I want to work with, and then click import. So what we get is an interim screen that again shows you what the data looks like. In most cases, you can just click transform data now. Sometimes if your data is a bit weirdly laid out, you might want to change this option and look at the entire data set. That's rare these days. Usually the top 200 rows gives you a fairly good indication of the data. So I'm going to click the transform data option, and this is going to open Power Query. Okay, so now we're looking at the query. Now I'm going to rename it over here on the right hand side to staging. Now if you're bringing in different data sets, you might have a staging query for each data set. So this is the staging query for the sales data. If you had multiple staging queries, you would need to name them so that you can see the difference. Okay, so as I mentioned, all of the data in this is already laid out well. I don't need to change anything in this. So all I need to do basically is click this drop down for close and load. And there is the second option, close and load to. Now, the option we want is only create connection. So what this does, it brings the data into Excel, but it doesn't show it in a table. So you don't actually see the whole data set. And click OK. And so we get our queries and connections task pane open on the right hand side here, and the staging query is shown there. And it says connection only. So that means there's no table created within Excel that you can see. Okay, so now we've brought the staging query in, we're going to create a query that is going to give us a list of all of the states that are in this particular query. What we're going to do is right click on the staging query on the right hand side and choose reference. What this does is this gives us our same data, but the source here, if I click on it, so the output of the previous query is the starting point for this query. So I'm going to rename this query to TBL states. This one is going to create a table in the spreadsheet, but it's only going to be a very simple table. It's only going to be one column wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the state column, and I'm going to choose remove other columns. With the state column selected, I'm going to right click and choose remove duplicates. You could also sort it if you like. I'll just leave it in this sequence, and what I'm then going to do is click the drop down, and this one I'm going to use the top option, close and load. This creates a TBL state sheet as well as a table called TBL states. I do use a TBL prefix for a lot of my tables. You don't have to, you can call it whatever you want. You could have called it just states, it's up to you. I like to have a prefix on my table names so that I know that it's a table name, because we're going to also use something in a minute called a range name. And range names and table names are very similar, but they are different. So I tend to have a different prefix for tables and names. So whilst I'm here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that range there. Now it comes up with TBL states, but I'm going to give it a range name. And so it's going to be RNG states. RNG for range and states. Make sure you press enter after you've typed in the name. Okay, that will disappear because the table name will take precedent over the range name. You can see the range name in use here. If I type in RNG state, you'll see it gives me a list of all of the states, and it spills down as per a dynamic array. Okay, so that is the range name that I've created. Now I'm going to use that range name to create a drop-down list. Okay, so let's go here, and I'll just say select state, and I'll just make this yellow so we can see, and I'm going to create a drop down in here. The shortcut to open up the data validation dialog is you press the Alt key, then the D key, and then the L key, and you press them in sequence, don't hold them down. And we're going to create a list, and if I type equals RNG states, that's all I want, and that's going to give me a drop down list of the states, and that's based on the data. Click OK. So click the drop down. I'm going to choose one. I'll choose New South Wales. There we go. So that's the interaction for the user. So the user can select the state, and that will affect the query. So now we'll create the filter query. So this is going to bring in the data for whichever one we choose. I'm going to choose New South Wales, and then we can add the interaction later. I'm going to give this cell a name. So this is called a range name. So I'm going to click in that name box again and just type in state filter. So this is an individual cell that I've given a range name. Okay, so let's go and create the filter that we're going to work with the staging query. So right click, reference on the staging query, and I'm going to click the drop down in state, and I'm just going to choose New South Wales, and I'm going to rename this to sales data. Okay, so this query is called sales data. And I'm just going to click the close and load icon. And there we have it. That is the New South Wales data imported. So we need to be able to sort of connect this drop-down cell with the query so that we can select the state. So here's how we do it. Click on that cell that's named State Filter. Click on the data ribbon, and this time we're going to use the From Table or Range option. Now, with this window, the applied steps here are actually not needed, and they're actually throwing things out. So here we go. I'm going to click the red X here and also the red X there, and just have the source. So I only need the source step here. And as you can see, it's got column 1 and it's got New South Wales. All I need to do is right click on that NSW or whatever state you had chosen and choose drill down. That's it. So what this does, this name, State Filter, is a query name as well now, and it represents at the moment New South Wales. So what I'm going to do is go back to home, and again I'm going to use that drop down and close and load to, and again just select only create connection. That's it. Now we're ready to modify the sales data query, and so I'm going to double click that. That very last entry, filtered rows, where I've got New South Wales, I'm going to get rid of that in the, if you can't see this, this is the formula bar, just like Excel. If you can't see this, click on View and then tick the formula bar. Sometimes it doesn't display. Okay, so click in here, and I'm going to remove the typed in New South Wales and start typing State Filter, and that's it there. That's it. That now is interacting with the State Filter query, which is interacting with that cell that we created on the spreadsheet. So we can just go close and load. And at the moment, it won't be any different. Okay, so at the moment, we have New South Wales. But if I choose WA, now I do need to refresh the data. So Power Queries do need to be refreshed. So if I right click on the sales data over here and say refresh, now I have WA. So you can see that you just need to refresh it. Another way to do it is to, let's do Tasmania, is Control, Alt, and the F5 key. Control, Alt, F5. Let's try that. So when we go to look at our data now, we should see Tasmania. There we go. When you are building Power Queries, sometimes you do need to add some interaction. This makes it easier to delegate, so you can hand your query over to other people to use. It's much better to use interaction like this rather than getting them to, say, modify a query, like going into Power Query and changing a setting. Once this one has been set up, then it just runs. This table states automatically updates. So if you did add any new states to your data, then it will automatically get picked up by the queries, and then the user can select the state. And again, that keyboard shortcut, Control Alt F5. So let's do that again. So let's say we want Victoria, Control Alt F5, and there's Victorian data. It does allow the user to interact with the query fairly easily using a drop down in this case. Range names, really easy. You saw how to capture that single range name, which was called State Filter, and that became a query for whatever value is in this cell B2. So Power Query, really powerful. Adding interaction makes it really, really useful and really easy to delegate your queries. Thanks for watching. Hope you found that useful.